Hi, everybody. If you take your seats, please. We're ready to start the second presentation. Well, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and CASA of Marion County is here to talk about the critical work they do with children in foster care. A lot of you already know Vanessa Nordyke. She's spoken to us many times before. She's a person committed to supporting not only civic engagement in Salem, but she's very socially involved. Community events like we see her as Mrs. Santa Claus at Christmas time, and in general, just supporting Salem in many, many ways. She got her bachelor's degree from Georgetown University, her Doctor of Laws from the University of Oregon. She was in the Public Defender's Office for quite some time, and now she's here today to talk to us as Executive Director of CASA of Marion County, to talk about why we should care about what they do, what their work is. And with her today is Dennis Prescott, who is the Volunteer Recruitment and Training Coordinator. And he'll tell you more about himself and how he got interested in CASA. So without further ado, let's welcome them.
Good job. All right, thank you. All right, folks, thank you so much for having us. If you want to snap the QR code now for the link to the slide deck, you can. Just because I know sometimes people like to have it in the palm of their hand. And we'll have, once you've done that, we'll get going. So hello everyone, Vanessa Nordyke, born and raised here in the city of Salem. One slight addendum to that bio. I worked for is this mic not working? Can folks hear me okay? Raise your hand. Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. One slight addendum, I didn't work for the Public Defender's Office. I worked for the Oregon Department of Justice with Fred Boss. Now, we know and love our public defenders. That is a very tough job, and I could give a whole other presentation just upon the importance of their work. But I am very proud to be an alum, as is Fred, of the Oregon Department of Justice, just down the street from me, as a matter of fact. So, all right, Dennis, I think we're going to take it away. And he's going to click this link. Now, before I talk, I want you to hear her talk.
At the age of 17, I had spent most of my life couch surfing with friends, family, and people we had just met, lived in more than 7 homeless shelters, stayed in several motels during the winter, and entered the foster care system with my younger sisters. I am 17 years old, and I have attended 7 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 3 high schools. We entered the foster care system. I was terrified. It was all new to me, and like many others, I had heard horror stories about foster care. Not realizing it, it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Now that I no longer have to care for my mother or play the parental role for my sisters because we're in a safe foster home that is supportive and loving, surrounded by people who care so deeply about us, like Lynn and Lucy and Casa and everyone, I am able to take control of my life, my future, and make my dream a reality. A year ago today, college was only a fantasy. I didn't even know what a college major was. Now, I will be the first person in my extended family to attend a university.
All right, so that is who we serve. That's what we do. And there are thousands of more children just like her. She is a graduate of South Salem High School, just like I am. And it's important that you know that every single high school in town has foster children. Girls and boys like Precious, who are struggling every day. But this is where CASA brings some hope. So today we will talk about CASA. We will make our pitch for you to volunteer for our organization. But I also want to make sure that we take a step back and tell you the scope and the magnitude of the challenges that we as a state face. 424 children were in foster care right here in Marion County last year. Next slide. And we were not able to serve 244 of them. And that is because we need volunteers. Why do we ask people to do this work for free? Why aren't we paying these professionals? Why aren't we fully funding this work? Those are great questions for your legislators. This is how long they typically stay in foster care. And this is part of the reason why finding volunteers can be a challenge for us. Who is ready to give 25 months, 8 to 12 hours a month? Like Lynn Crimshaw. Some of you may know Lynn. Did you see that woman standing next to her? She's one of our CASA volunteers. She's bilingual, as is Precious's family. And when she was standing next to Precious there, she had only been working with Precious for the last 6 months. But you could see the bond, the ease at which they handled each other, the way that they were comfortable with each other. That's the kind of bond that you develop as a CASA volunteer. So I'm going to stat bomb you a little bit. And again, that's why I want to make sure you know the slides will be available to you, because I think these are stats worth telling. So when you back up, you can see that around the nation, the cost of foster care placement, the cost of children not having a safe and stable and permanent home costs billions of dollars. The cost of not completing high school, over $2 billion in lost lifetime gross income, which makes sense when you think about it. How many jobs are completely off the table if you don't have a high school diploma? How many jobs require a college degree or a graduate degree, a law degree, a medical degree, an engineering degree? You know what I'm getting at. Early parenthood, homelessness, incarceration. I guarantee you that some of our unsheltered individuals on the streets in the city of Salem have foster care experience. The Annie E. Casey Foundation is a national foundation, and they did a breakdown state by state. They were able to pay for the kind of research that I could only dream of hiring a researcher to do for me. And these are the stats for Oregon. And they did this as of 2022. So less than half of Oregon foster children are graduating from high school. That's a problem. That's a red alert. That's a 5-alarm fire, in my opinion. This is, in my opinion, one of the most pressing challenges we face as an organization, and it's why education is such a huge facet of what we do at CASA. Every year, by the way, in August, we do a big school supply drive, and we encourage all members of the community to drop off new school supplies, backpacks, etc. I see my father is in the audience today. Thank you, Dad, for being here. He's a Willamette Law graduate, and he dropped off a lot of backpacks for our school supply drive. So thank you, Dad. Thank you for being a part of the solution. And you can see we have some other daunting stats. So clearly, these kids need help. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about how this actually works. For many of us, foster care may be a complete mystery. It's something you've heard of, but have not personally experienced. So it all starts with a report of abuse or neglect. And the DHS confidential hotline receives tens of thousands of calls with suspected abuse or neglect every single year. Now, the DHS, or Department of Human Services, they have a lot of really stiff, very difficult to meet targets. When these reports come in, they're not allowed to sit on it. They need to immediately investigate it. But I talked to my local Salem branch DHS office. They're getting about 100 assessment requests per week. And they're supposed to timely respond to every single one of them, Because what if those allegations are true? So once they investigate, they have to reach one of three conclusions: that the report of abuse or neglect is founded, unfounded, or unable to determine. And if it is founded, DHS and LEA, law enforcement agencies, have the authority to place the child in protective custody until a judge can make further rulings. And then we have the shelter hearing, which occurs within 24 judicial hours. Does anyone know where the Marion County Juvenile Courthouse is? Right? Not many. So it's tucked away on the Marion County campus. It's right next to the state hospital campus. My staff are there several times a week for these shelter hearings, because at that point we're trying to decide, are we going to be appointed to the case? Next slide. So once the case kicks off, these are all the parties involved. It's a lot. It's a lot for a child to juggle. It's a lot for a parent involved to juggle. It's just a lot, period. And the thing that happens to make it even more challenging is that sometimes people get reassigned. So the attorney for the child might change, the attorneys for the parents might change, the caseworkers might change, the assistant attorney general assigned to the case might change. But the one constant is the CASA volunteer. Because when we assign you to a case, that is your case. And we're not going to pull you off that case unless we have no other choice, because this child sees enough turmoil. You heard from our student, how many high schools and middle schools and elementary schools has she been to? How many changes in resource parents has she seen? How many good-intentioned adults has she seen come and go in her life? That's why having someone like Lynn Crimshaw is that stable and constant presence that she sorely needs. Next slide. See if we do it on time. Good. All right. And by the way, I know there will be time for Q&A at the end, but if you do have a burning question, you can raise your hand. I'm more than happy to entertain questions at any time during the presentation. Okay. So under Oregon law, which, by the way, CASAs are required. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. We have a duty to the child, and we are guided by what is known in the law as the best interest principle, meaning that we must advocate for what is in the best interest of the child. And you can imagine how sometimes the best interest of the child may not be what the child wants. Child may want to go home, even if home is not safe. Child may want to go back to dad, even if dad is not safe. So we have to be very objective. This is why we have such a rigorous training program, which Dennis will elaborate on a little bit more later. And we are required to make these fact-based recommendations to the court. And yes, we do tell the court what the child wants, but again, if you ask me what I want at age 5, I wanted a pony, I wanted to live at Disneyland. We all know that those are not always realistic options, right, Dad? So you can imagine how much more interesting some of these wishes and desires may be when you've been uprooted from your own home. Next slide. I deliberately put this up here. Your organizer said, you shouldn't put this slide up because you can't read it. That's the point. That's the point. Does this look confusing from a 10,000-foot view? Yes, it is extremely confusing. We're not going to walk through this. This is intentional because I want you to understand just from looking at the flow chart how complex these cases can be, how daunting it can be to a caregiver or a parent who might have minimal education, struggling with substance abuse, in and out of homelessness. You can see why the court-appointed attorneys are so vital. And please join me in thanking all of our court-appointed attorneys. They are exhausted, they are overworked, they have way too many cases, and they are the lifeline for the mothers and fathers who are in the system. And although we don't always agree with what their clients want, everyone still deserves a measure of human dignity and respect. So understand what a nightmare that would be. So this is where I want you to think about some of the issues here. The state of Oregon has to have policies for how to handle the thousands of foster care cases each year, right? You can't have willy-nilly decisions being made where one caseworker decides, well, my philosophy is this, or another caseworker from grants past says something else. So instead, the state sets policies. And I know that they work really hard on those policies. As a DOJ attorney, I can assure you of that. But now that I'm not at DOJ and I now am a different legal party, that gives me an opportunity to take a step back and to really think about how these policies can have an impact on children. So here's one of their official positions on where to place a child. Remember, child's been plucked out of their home for abuse or neglect allegations, and now DHS has to quickly decide, where do I put this kiddo? I need to put this child somewhere now. Where do I do? The preferred option is to place them with their relatives. Can anyone imagine what some of the advantages might be of being placed with the uncle or the aunt or the grandma, right? I bet there's a lot of doting grandparents in the room here, right? I mean parents, excuse me. Didn't want to suggest or imply. Thank you. Yeah, anyway. Now, are there any disadvantages that you can think of to placing a child with a relative instead of a resource parent who has no connection to the family? Would anyone like to share some thoughts that come to mind? There's no wrong answers. Just shout it out if something comes to mind. Don't be shy. Yes?
Access to the abusing parent.
Access to the abusing parent. Thank you.
They cave into the child and follow the child's wishes.
They cave into the child and follow the child's wishes.
They may not have the resources to care for the child.
They may not have the resources to care for the child. Yes?
The abusing parent learned it somewhere.
The abusive parent learned it somewhere. Excellent. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is what DHS will tell you the advantages are of placing children with relatives. And I want you to follow along with me. Are these statements always true? First one, children know they are loved. Is that true? Children are healthier and do better when they are in contact with their family. Is that true in all cases? Family members help preserve the child's culture and history. Is that true in all cases? What if this is a lot of families? A lot of modern families may have multiple religions, multiracial families, some within an Indian tribe, some not. We've all heard horror stories of Indian children entering foster care, and the first thing that the relative did was lop off their hair, which is a huge offense to a lot of Native cultures. So these are some of the assumptions that are built in that are all based on the DHS website. Next slide. So some of you have touched on what some of the disadvantages might be from assuming that placement with next of kin is the best choice. So in no particular order, here are some of the challenges that we see. And some of you have already called these out. The connection to the birth parents. The kinship caregivers may struggle to enforce the rules regarding contact with the birth parents. Clear boundaries and expectations could be challenging. Down here under the third column, adequacy of housing is a challenge. Don't get me started on the utter lack of affordable housing in Salem or around the nation. That's a whole other presentation. Welcome me back some other time. Placement without warning or preparation. Kinship caregivers may not have adequate training or resources to address a child's special needs, such as behavioral issues. Sometimes the behavioral issues don't show themselves up. They don't show immediately. But as the child starts to feel more comfortable, that's when the tantruming, the night terrors, the inappropriate behaviors of a variety of kinds start revealing themselves. And what do you do in that situation?
Especially if you have a child a long time.
We're good. Okay, next slide. All right, question, is this enough to raise a child? How many 18-year-old boys do you know eat at least $1,000?
I was on a swim team. Did those hear me okay? No. Okay. We may need to use different mic. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Switch to that other one. No.
It's on.
Right, with the handheld mics. Yep. Hold on, stuck.
Now it'll work.
Thank you very much. 1, 2, 3, we're good, we're back. Okay. I remember growing up, I was a student athlete. I did swim team, fantastic all over body workout. I would eat dinner on my way home to eat dinner. Like literally would be, you know, once I was old enough to drive, God help us all, I would drive to do drive-in, you know, inhale a double cheeseburger, and then I'd go home and eat Dad's lasagna. No problem. So this is part of the challenge. To the surprise of literally no one, we don't have people lining up to become foster parents. This is a stipend. It would never, in my opinion, cover the actual cost of raising a child, especially one who has a lot of challenges, who arrives with little more than the clothes on their back. Maybe no hygiene products. Maybe they haven't been to a dental appointment ever. Someone who hasn't been going to school, has no backpack, no notebooks, no pens, no pencils, nothing. A lot of times when the kids are removed from the home, they don't have their own suitcase. And so garbage bags are used to haul their handful of belongings. And this is how it begins. So here's another challenge, and I think this is another challenge with placement of next of kin. Sometimes poverty is generational, right? Sometimes the safety nets are weaker for lower income families. That's just the reality, folks. And one of the things that I noticed as soon as I started running CASA of Marion County was that virtually all of these children come from very, very poor families. Why is poverty such a strong overlap? Why is there such a high correlation between poverty and foster care? What does that say about our country? So as you can see on here, many families live below the poverty line. And I would say the poverty line is ridiculously low. I feel like the poverty line should be at least twice that. For a family of 4, $31,000, that's the poverty line? Are you kidding me? Can you see how when people talk about systemic inequities, this is what I'm talking about. It's not fiction. It's not some magical unicorn. It's real. There are baked in systemic inequalities, and this is Exhibit A. So why might children who will come from poor families be more likely to end up in foster care? Well, income can build a stronger safety net. You've got money for tutors. You've got money for counselors. You have a home with additional space where the child will have a space of their own. You have access to extracurriculars. You have parents who are more likely to be able to drive their kids to school because they can afford a car and car insurance and gas to put into the car. Not every family in Salem can afford to do that, and certainly not in Marion County. Next slide. So so that's your backdrop, right? That's how daunting the challenges are. And we are required under Oregon law. There's an Oregon revised statute, that's a statewide law, that says that the court shall appoint a CASA in every single case. There's not a ton of laws that say the judge shall do something, but this is one of them. And the Oregon Revised Statutes also includes a CASA fund, established and appropriated to the Oregon Department of Administrative Services for the purposes of carrying this out. So the legislature created the framework to require CASA programs in every county statewide. And they also created the CASA fund. I wish I could tell you that they have fully funded it ever since. I wish I could tell you the state never imposes unfunded mandates on anyone. But of course, that's not true. Next slide. So you'll see soon, we have never had the funding we needed to carry out our mandate, ever. We've received bits and pieces. And in recent years, there's been a lot of turmoil in federal funding, particularly. So here are just a few screenshots of some headlines. All of these are within the last year. The oldest headline is April 23rd, when our national organization's funding was abruptly terminated by the presidential administration. And the administration did not single out national CASA. Instead, there were huge swaths. There were billions of dollars of grants that were disrupted for unclear reasons. Billions of dollars with a B. So not only CASA, but a lot of programs like CASA for the public good, to ensure public health, to support our kids nationally, were just abruptly cut off. National CASA did layoffs, and of course that impacted their ability to administer pass-through funding to organizations like mine. National CASA has never been fully funded, and unfortunately most of their funding came from that one federal grant. That's the scary thing about federal grants. They're here one day and gone the next. So we got some local press. There were several local articles, but the one to the right, Advocates for Oregon Foster Kids Hit by Funding Cuts. It wasn't just national CASA that was impacted. We had a federal earmark. You probably heard of congressional earmarks. It's usually a big, shiny, smiling press release from your member of Congress saying, look what I did. I brought back a little piece of pork for my district. Those are great. We had one. We were supposed to have one. But in the last legislative cycle, federal legislative cycle, Congress passed its budget without anybody getting their earmarks. All members of Congress were in the same boat. And we had an Oregon member of Congress, Susan Bonamici, who fought tooth and nail for us. We didn't get our earmark. And mind you, that earmark would have been just for 1 year of partial funding. And we had to work so hard just to do that. So guess what? Now we're back in the pool, and we are applying this year once again. So if you want to join us in our letter writing campaign, let me know, especially if it's an election year for them. So we were able to secure some temporary funding, but that $1 million, this headline right here, that was from earlier this year. That was from us just merely trying to gain back some of the funding we've lost. So as you can imagine, every year when I go to my board of directors and I need to do some financial forecasting and put together a proposed budget for the board of directors review and my finance committee's review and my treasurer's review, I'm like, well, I'm going to do my best. But they're very well aware of the challenges that we face. Next slide. So this is the slide that really irks me. Remember, CASAs are required. And remember that we have our own dedicated fund created by the legislature. But look here, folks. It's never been where it should be. This is the fiscal year biennium. You know the legislature has bienniums, right? 2001 to 2003. This is 5 million, 10 million, 15. If you wanted to fully fund all Oregon CASA programs in the state, you'd have to be up here. We've never been close, ever. This little orange right here, this is when we temporarily had some federal funding, but it got phased out. In the 2023-25 biennium, that was where we got 5.9 million. And in our current cycle, 26, 27, we got 6.9. So it's a little bit higher than over here. So if I were to gauge where we are currently, it would probably be right about there, 6.4 million. So as you can see, there's a big challenge remaining. Let's move on. All right, so I'd now like to invite Dennis to say a few words for you. I want Dennis to share why he's with our organization, and I will advance the slides for you. So let's give Dennis a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Yeah, super excited to be here speaking with you guys. But my name is Dennis Prescott. I am originally from San Antonio. Spent most of my life growing up in Monmouth Independence, however. And I graduated from Western Oregon University about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, because I've been here for 4 years. What really drew me to CASA, because my degree was actually in public health. And so what originally drew me to CASA was the fact that I, myself, and my younger sister are both adopted from separate families. And I've always really felt that our stories were fairly unique among children who were either in foster care or adopted, in that we were both adopted into an amazing family. We've always seen them as our family. I know they're my parents, my brothers, my sisters, sorry. And I also fairly unique in the fact that I also grew up knowing my biological mother, and she eventually had 2 other children, so I have 2 younger half-siblings from her that I grew up knowing. I got the chance to meet them for the first time when I was, I believe, 17, my senior year of high school, so that was really cool. And then just more recently, even more recently, last year, I got the chance to meet my biological father for the first time. So again, you're not typically going to see a story like that, or really even anything necessarily close to that. And I've always really had the need, or felt the need, to give back and make sure that, you know, the kids in our communities at least have some shot at the same story that I had, my younger sister had as well. So that's what really drew me to CASA, and I've loved being here ever since then. So we've talked a little bit about the importance of CASA volunteers. Just kind of like to highlight why what they do is so important, that stability, that stable adult presence in their lives. Unfortunately, the caseworkers are overworked. They have way too many cases on their caseload, and so because of that, a lot of things slip through the cracks. Academics, education being almost first and foremost. So a lot of kids who are in the foster care system are already behind their peers academically. And then when they get into care, if they're moving from placement to placement to placement, a lot of the times that's out of the school district that they were going to school in. So their IEPs, behavioral support plans aren't tracking them. And so unfortunately they continue to slip through the cracks. But having that CASA in their lives, like Lynn and Precious, allows that CASA to be that squeaky wheel, to make sure that the IEP is up to date, to make sure that if the child is, you know, struggling with behaviors, that they get on an academic or a behavioral support plan. And so not only academically does that lead to success, but in all other areas in their lives as well. So whether that's their mental health, their physical well-being, whatever that might be, the CASA volunteer is there to make sure that they are going to thrive while they're in care and have success after they've exited care. So just up on the screen there are a few fast facts about the difference that CASAs make. So we know that a child who's been assigned a CASA volunteer is about half as likely to re-enter foster care after they've already exited. Unfortunately, we see that a lot with children in the foster care system. They'll be in care for 5 or 6 months, they'll get returned back home to mom or dad, and then 2 or 3 months later, they're back in care again. But the CASA is kind of a safety net to guard against that. And they're also more likely to receive the necessary services that they need, like I touched on with their academics and their physical and mental health and well-being. Don't know if this has been proven yet, but I do have a sneaking suspicion that part of the reason why kids are about half as likely to re-enter care after they've already exited is, if you can imagine, if that child is going to be returned back home to their biological parents, it's going to be in that child's best interest that the parents have all the necessary services and support that they need while they are in care to set them up for long-term success after they've had their kids returned back home to them as well.
Sorry.
Are more likely to graduate on time. Again, we've kind of talked about that a little bit as well. Yeah, so recently ODHS has kind of started to move towards family-first prevention services, so trying to keep the families together where at all possible. And so we see a lot of, when a child or a CPS call is made, ODHS is going to, unless the child's safety and well-being is at imminent threat, they're going to try and work some sort of in-home plan with the parents to kind of help keep the kids in that same family. And so I believe they've started doing that back in 2020, I believe. 2018, I'm sorry. And so that is another thing I don't, secondarily to that, they are also focused more on guardianship placements for a while now, as opposed to adoptive placements. But these are all things that the CASA volunteers have to take into consideration when they are advocating for their kids, because not all the time is what the states or the caseworker is advocating for or fighting for. That's not always going to be what the CASA's viewpoint is. And so we expect our volunteers, if they don't, or if they disagree with the caseworker, we expect them to make that argument at their court hearings as well. Sorry, I don't recognize the slide.
Yeah, sure. No, I can take care of this. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that just an example of the kinds of cases we see. So we see a lot of newborns that are born drug affected, and that often warrants temporary placement in foster care. But what we often see when kids re-enter care, substance abuse is the #1 driver. Honestly, substance abuse, from what we've seen from DHS puts out a data report every single year, and they identify the top catalysts for foster care placement. Substance abuse is #1. Mental illness is on that list, but it's a distant one, right towards the bottom of the list. Housing insecurity is a challenge, but substance abuse by mile is the reason why most children are placed in foster care. Another example is neglect. So abuse is not actually the main reason. Sexual abuse, physical abuse are not the main reasons that we see kids in care. More often it is neglect. And so neglect can mean many things, but not having enough food in the fridge, not having a safe, healthy, and clean home, children who have medical needs that are not being seen. There's a reason why a lot of our teachers are the canaries in the coal mine, so to speak, because they're the ones who see the kids coming to school, showing up exhausted, disheveled, underfed, struggling. And so I want to give a shout out to all of our educators, past and present. We have a lot of kids in the Salem Kaiser School District who are showing up to class and they're not ready to learn, for a wide variety of reasons. Food insecurity is real, and layered on top of that, we have a lot of families who are concerned about ICE activity in our area, which adds an additional layer of anxiety for children, because I've had kids tell me, I'm afraid that when I get out of school, my mom isn't going to be there to pick me up. So these are just some of the additional challenges. So I think I'll take it back to Dennis now. We'll have you wrap up a few more slides.
Yeah, of course. So going back to what I was saying about the academic success and the role that our volunteers play in that, this is something that we are incredibly proud of our volunteers for achieving. But the graduation rates for all Oregon foster teens was about 49%. So about about half of them are not graduating on time. And you heard Vanessa speak about the long-term, lifetime impact that has not only on the children, but our communities as a nation as a whole. But volunteers children who are assigned to a CASA volunteer here in Marion County, we had 87% of those kids graduate. So something that we're incredibly proud of. So our volunteers like Lynn that you heard about earlier, she played an enormous role in Precious's life. And we have stories like that continuing to play out time and time again, and it's all thanks to our amazing volunteers.
All right, and so now we're going to hear an update from a certain someone. Let's make sure.
Family to attend the university.
Hi, guys. Okay, I'm just gonna hold it. Last year, I proudly announced I'd be the first in my family to attend university. Today, I'm living that long-held dream. On April 3rd, 2024, I discovered I was a finalist for the Ford Family Scholarship. By April 30th, I learned I had been awarded the scholarship, guaranteeing a full ride to my dream school, Linfield University.
Clap again.
Guaranteeing a full ride to my dream. Oh, yeah. With the thrilling news that my college finances were secured, the final step was to be formally welcomed to the Ford Family Foundation at the Recognition Conference on July 13th and 14th, 2024. The conference took place in Eugene, where I had the chance to meet like-minded individuals who also received the scholarship and connected with my new community. I was accompanied by my incredible CASA worker, Lynn, who wholeheartedly stepped in when my resource parent at the time couldn't attend. Lynn didn't hesitate to join me, even though it meant leaving her beloved fur baby behind for a few days. Her support was invaluable during this memorable experience. Everything seemed perfect. My only task was to savor my last summer before diving into a new adventure and chapter of independence. However, in the final weeks before pre-orientation, I encountered numerous unexpected challenges with the resource home where I had been staying. These obstacles were overwhelming, and I couldn't have navigated them by myself. Thankfully, I once again had Lynn in my corner, a reliable source of support when I needed it most. The week before pre-orientation, I was relocated to another resource home. With the help of both Lynn and Viola, who is a part of Salem Angels, I managed to move to campus. Their help made the process less daunting and ensured I didn't feel alone during such a crucial time in my life. As a first-gen student at Linfield, I had the privilege of participating in the WILD program, a week-long adventure that allowed me to forge new friendships and experience Oregon's breathtaking natural beauty. During the program, I had the chance to hike, camp, volunteer, visit the iconic Tillamook factory, and even ride the historic Garibaldi train for the first time.
All right, I'll take it from here. Okay, so does anyone recognize that young lady? That was just 1 year after her last speech, the one you saw at the start. Did she sound different? So a lot of what we do, yes, we're extremely proud, and I wish I could tell you that we get a full ride for every kid. I cannot promise that. But we really wanted to set her up. She is a brilliant young mind, and she deserves access to the same opportunities that I had and that everyone else in this room had. So let's advance to the next slide. So lest you think that that was our only successful college kiddo, we also met Deanna and Gloria. And at that same CASA luncheon, which I highly recommend you attend, we do an annual luncheon that is free to attend, where you hear highlights about our impact and what we do every year. And so we decided in 2024 to make it all about how we serve teens and young adults. So that's why we brought out Deanna and Gloria. They are also first-generation students, like Precious, and they are currently studying at Western Oregon University. Deanna wants to be a teacher, and Gloria wants to be a nurse. And so you can tell by the smiles on their faces that these kiddos are going places. And that's what we want for all of our kids. Next slide. So here's my final pitch, folks. Are you ready to join our work? Please think about it. You will be trained by Dennis, who is an extraordinary teacher. He's great. Our next training cycle starts April 13, which is an online class, and then we'll be doing in-person trainings throughout the month of April and May. And if that's too soon for you, no worries. We will announce a later training cycle in the year. And if you're not ready to be a CASA volunteer, which again is 8 to 12 hours a month of volunteer work, then there are other ways that you can support our work by attending our events, telling your legislators to support our funding. I would really love to not have to dedicate so much of my time as an ED shaking the can. I like to do the work. I want to be there to support my CASAs. I want to go to court with them. I want to make sure we're following best practices. I want to be able to spend time with Precious and Deanna and Gloria. Help me do my work and help Dennis do his work. Next slide. So if you're interested, one more time, that volunteer time commitment is 8 to 12 hours a month, and that's an approximate. And what you do in that typical 8 to 12 hours is meeting with a child in person, so there may be some driving time to go meet them wherever they're located. You might be going to the doctor's office to talk to their doctor and see how they're doing. Because we are a legal party to the case, that means we have full access to all of their confidential HIPAA-protected information. Because it's essential, because how else can we say how the child is doing if we really don't know how the child is doing? And I've had judges tell my volunteers at trainings, I read your court report first. And they tell us, so the reason they do that is that nobody, and I mean nobody, knows that child like the CASA does. Because the caseworkers, the attorneys, they've got dozens of cases apiece. Your average DHS caseworker has about 30 cases or more. And by the way, those cases might involve multiple siblings too. But our CASA volunteers usually get one case and one case only. Only the more experienced ones can get a second case. And of course, if you are afraid of appearing in court, if you've never stood up in a courtroom before, if you've never had to make your pitch to a judge or question witnesses, don't worry. I'm available for one-on-one coaching. I do miss the courtroom a little bit. That was really fun. I miss cross-examining people especially. That was my favorite part. Anyway, but also we provide wraparound support for you. So we have you meet, as a volunteer, you meet once a month with your CASA supervisor. These are people who are fully committed to the cause. Some of them have experience in foster care and homelessness themselves, so they can understand what it's like for the kiddos and the families that are experiencing the foster care system. We will provide you with a template court report so you know exactly what kind of information to put in there. All of those good things. Next slide. And our final thing, we also do fun stuff. We do fun things. I want to see smiles on all of our kids' faces. And our gift to the community every year is our superhero run, because it includes a 100% free fun run for all ages at Riverfront Park. And the 1 mile fun run is on all the paved trails, so it's great for folks who have ADA needs as well. We want you to bring the stroller with the kiddos, bring whatever you need, but the free 1 mile fun run is our gift to the community, because we want every child to experience joy and community and to enjoy fitness, all these things, right? When kids feel alone and alienated, that's when they struggle the most. We also do a ticketed 5K and 10K, and if you want to set up a team, we even have professional bibs, like the little athletic bibs that have the chip in them, so when you cross the finish line, you know what your official time is. So anyway, not all heroes wear capes, and that's what our CASA staff and our volunteers are. Thank you so much. All right, any questions for Dennis or me? I see up there. Okay, never mind.
Hello there. My name is Priscilla, and I was a former CASA for 10 years, so you did a great job. I think it would be helpful to explain the training that CASAs need to go through, especially the idea of writing up the court reports and the full deal.
Yeah, of course, of course. So again, I'm Dennis. I do the volunteer recruitment and training. So the volunteer pre-service training is about 30-ish hours in total. Like Vanessa mentioned, it does take place online. So about half of that takes place online. There's kind of weekly modules that you're able to work through at your own pace, kind of covering a little bit of a background on the child welfare system, and just, overall things like that. And then we do 2 in-person training sessions, and that's really the time where we do a deeper dive into what being a CASA is all about. So we bring in all of the current volunteers who are going through the training. We get together at our office, and we go through things and talk about, how to write a court report, the types of information that should be included in those court reports, how to speak in court, how to advocate outside of the courtroom for your child. And we really make sure that we want to cover all of our bases because the majority of our volunteers aren't coming from a law background. And so we do a really good job of making sure that we cover each and everything that you might have a question about. We want to talk about that. I schedule courtroom observations at the juvenile courthouse for actual court hearings. And so new volunteers get the opportunity to go in and sit in on one of those proceedings. I typically will try to schedule those for hearings that have a current CASA volunteer on them so they get the chance to see, kind of visualize what it's going to be like when they step into the courtroom as well. And then they also get the chance, we call it a community partner night. We do it on a Thursday evening for a couple of hours back at our office, and we bring in one of the judges, program manager from ODHS, and then one of the attorneys who handles child dependency or child CPS cases. And they get to speak to our volunteers. The volunteers get the chance to ask them any questions that they might have about their role in the system. So when it's all said and done, I know a lot of people are very nervous, and that's, completely understandable. But when it's all said and done, our volunteers are very, very prepared to step out there. As Vanessa mentioned, Lynn had only been a CASA for about 6 months by the time she got assigned to Precious. So not only throughout the training, but afterwards with their advocate coordinators, we want to make sure that our volunteers are supported. They feel like they have the skill base that they need and the knowledge that they need to successfully advocate for their kids.
Hi, this is Brenda. This is a room of retirees. And so although we have a lot of time, a lot of us travel. So if there were a court appearance to come up during travel time, would a staff person be able to take that on?
Yes. So we understand that this is volunteer work. We do have volunteers who work full-time, have young children. So we want to make sure that we are working with our volunteers whenever possible to do so. So if a hearing is coming up, the volunteer knows they can't make it, it's because they're on vacation, they're sick, something else comes up, that volunteer's advocate coordinator or staff coordinator will go on their behalf. So we make sure that we, again, want to work with our volunteers wherever possible to do so. One other thing is slightly off topic, but I understand that being a CASA volunteer can feel a little daunting. I would like to point out that we do have CASA couples, so if the idea of doing it alone is a little scary or intimidating, if you have a friend, a partner who would be interested in doing it with you, you would be able to work on the same case together, and that definitely helps lighten the load some.
And I would also add that the court has to take the CASA's availability into consideration in the first place. You're a legal party. You have a right to be there just as much as any of the attorneys in the room.
Hi, my name is Joan. I don't remember the numbers, but you said you don't have enough volunteers for the number of children who need one. So how do you decide which children get a CASA volunteer?
So unfortunately, we kind of have to triage. So we track all of the open cases that are going on here in Marion County. The advocate coordinators are kind of in charge of that process. And so we kind of have to work our way down the list. We work based off of referrals from the judge, from one of the attorneys, one of the child's family members. So that kind of would bump a case up the list. Cases that are a little bit more serious or complex, unfortunately, typically goes a little bit higher on the list. And so that's kind of the way that we have to go about attacking this process. And it's not only just for us, but CASA programs across the states, and I would venture a guess across the country, are all doing something similar when it comes to deciding which cases get a CASA, unfortunately.
My name is John. It's kind of a challenging question. I know somebody who, and I think what you have presented is wonderful. It's a great idea. It's a great program. I'm wondering what the reality is in terms of the end result. I know somebody who went through the training and worked with 2 people. Now, they didn't work for 10 years like Patricia did, so it might be a very limited sample, but they were very frustrated at the end because it sounded like something with either the statutes or the judges give preference or whatever to the parents, and that the children continued to return to the home where the abuse was going on or the neglect, and they never got out of the cycle. So I'm just curious. And again, that was probably a very limited sample, and I'd like to hear.
That's not the norm. And I don't know if that was a Marion County CASA that you're referring to. Okay. So he shook his head no. So the Marion County judges are very invested in the CASA perspective. When we hold quarterly meetings to discuss everything from courtroom procedure to policies, ongoing challenges, CASA always has a seat at the table. We just had that quarterly meeting, and the presiding judge of the juvenile court turned to me specifically and said, well, I'd like to hear CASA's update. So we have a seat at the table, we are treated seriously, and we are treated with respect. And it's because our program works so hard. When people are trained by dentists and supervised by my other staff, by the time they show up in court, they've gone over their court reports several times, they are prepared. And if anything, my judges have told me privately that I really would like it if your CASA spoke up more. So I'm sorry to hear about that experience, but I've been at CASA of Marion County for 3 years now, and that is not the experience that we have. Our judges deeply value what our CASAs have to say, and as I said, I've had them tell us during our trainings, I read your court report first, because I know that you know that child better than anybody in the room. So I'm very sorry to hear that. Other questions?
I think we don't have time for any more, unfortunately. We'd love to keep you for a long time, but we're all very grateful for this opportunity to hear more about CASA, and we thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much.